is the narrow long end of the uterus which leads to the vagina. So I can say that the cervix is the entrance of the womb. That's the entrance of the womb. Then it regulates the opening and the closing of the vagina. That's another function of the cervix. It leads to the vagina from the womb. It's the entrance of the womb, but also leads to the vagina. Then it regulates the closing and opening of the vagina, especially during birth. The vulva is the collective term for the external female reproductive or the genital parts. The vulva is a final opening to the outside of the vagina. Then the vulva includes the labia majora, that's the outer lip, and the labia minora, called the inner lip, which are pierced. The labia major and the labia minor are pairs of fleshly folds of tissue surrounding the vulva. Now, the clitoris is a small, sensitive, rod-like structure corresponding to the penis of the male. The clitoris is found in the female, but it's a correspondence to the penis of the male. It is erectile in nature. It becomes turgid when filled with blood during sexual excitement. Then the clitoris helps to stimulate the female during sexual intercourse. Now, we talked about the differences between the male and the female reproductive organs. In the male, the testes are in the scrotal sacs outside the body. But in the female, the ovaries are located inside the body. In male, you have an epididymitis present, but it is absent in the female. The sperms are produced by the testes in the males, while the eggs or the ova are produced by the ovary in the female. The sperm pass out through the urethra in the male, but in the female, the eggs pass into the oviduct. In the male, the sperm ducts are present, but in the female, it is absent because the female doesn't produce sperm. Then you have seminal vesicle present in the male, you don't have it in the female. Prostate gland, you find it in the male, it is absent in the female. Then in the male, you have the Cowper's gland present, it is absent in the female. Penis is present in the male, penis is absent in the female. Then in the male, you have the oviduct absent, oviduct is present in the female. Uterus, that's the womb, you have it in the female, you don't have uterus in the male. Then in the female, you have the vagina, it is absent in the male. The cervix is present in the female, it is absent in the male. The vulva, you find it in the female, but it is absent in the male. Now, the structural differences between toad and bird's egg. Toad and bird, they both produce egg, but once you look at the structural differences between the eggs of toad and bird. In toad, the toad egg does not have a shell, but in bird you have shelled egg present. In toad, there is limited food reserve, but you have large food reserve in the bird. Eggs are laid in chains in toad, while eggs are laid singly in birds. Then the eggs are held together by a string of jelly-like material in toad, but the egg yolk held in position by two tough strands of albumen called chalaza for protection. In the bird, you have chalaza present, but there is no chalaza in toad. What are the advantages of development of embryo in the uterus of a mammal over that of a toad in the bird? In both mammal and toad there is egg production, but the embryo of the mammal develops inside the uterus of the female, but in that of a toad, the egg is in the water. So what advantage does the egg of mammal in the uterus have over that of a toad in water? First, the development of embryo in mammal is internal and provides greater protection against injury since it's inside the mother. Then in toad, the development of embryo is external and the egg is exposed to a great risk. Amnion ensures good aquatic environment for developing in the embryo. You have the amnion in the mama that ensures a good aquatic environment for development of the embryo, but in toad is water, and the water in toad may dry up, thus exposing the birds to hazard. In mammals, the internal environment of the uterus ensures constant environmental conditions, but in toad, the body of water is likely to fluctuate the environmental conditions. In mama, the developing embryo is protected inside the mother, but in toad, the eggs laid and develop in water are exposed to predators. Any predator can come and pick up the egg of a toad, but it's not possible for that of a mama. So those are differences between the young of the mama being in the uterus and that of the egg of toad being in water. Now, we'll be talking about the reproductive system in plants. Reproductive systems in plants. The part of the flowering plants modified for sexual reproduction is the flower. So, flower is the major reproductive system of plants, and the flower usually consists of an axis or a receptacle on which the walls of the flower leaves are arranged. So we're talking about the various parts of the flower. First is the calyx. The calyx consists of sepals, which are usually green and protect the flower in the bud. That's the greenish part of the flower. It's always at the base. Then there may be an epicalyx of bracts below it, as we have in hibiscus flower. So you have epicalyx in hibiscus flower. Then the corolla consists of yellow petals with a nectar at its base. It attracts insects for pollination. So when the calyx and the corolla are fused together, the perianth is the resulting word. So in a case where you have the calyx and corolla being fused together, you have what we call the perianth. Then the andresium. Andresium is the male sexual reproductive organ made up of one or more stamen. Then each stamen is made up of filaments bearing an anther made up of 4 pollen sacs, which contains the pollen grains containing the male gametes. The gynoecium or the pistil. This is a female reproductive organ made up of carpel. Each carpel now consists of 3 parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. The stigma is the sticky structure to which the pollen grains are there during pollination. The style is located just below the stigma and it joins the stigma to the ovary. The ovary lies below the sepals, petals, and stamens and contains the ovule, which forms the seed after fertilization. So the ovary in the gynoecium contains ovules that later forms the seed after fertilization has occurred. Then, in relation to the carpel now, we'll be talking about some terms. And the first is when you say a particular flower is monocarpous. It simply means that the pistil or the gynoecium consists of a single carpel. So you have monocarpous, one carpel. Then polycarpous. When you say a flower or a gynoecium is polycarpous, it means the gynoecium or the pistil consists of 2 or more carpels, as we have in hibiscus. So it says that hibiscus is polycarpous in nature, while crotalaria is monocarpous in nature. Then when you say apocarpous, apocarpous means the carpels are free from one another, as we have in bryophyllum. So bryophyllum is apocarpous in nature. Then the next one is syncarpous. Syncarpous means all the carpels are fused together. So okra and hibiscus have its carpels fused together, even though hibiscus has more than two or more carpels. So you can say hibiscus is polycarpous and at the same time syncarpous. It has more than 2 carpels and the carpels are fused together. Then you say a flower is an essential flower when both stamens and carpels are together. Stamens and carpels being together, since they are alone concerned with reproduction. So when you have the stamens and the carpels together, you say the flower is an essential flower. So we look at terms used in describing flowers. A flower is said to be a complete flower. A flower is said to be a complete flower when it has all the 4 types of the floral parts, which are the calyx, the corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. So it has all the 4 parts. You say it's a complete flower. But when a flower lacks 1 or more floral parts, you say the flower is incomplete. It doesn't either have a calyx, corolla, androecium, or gynoecium. So when any 1 or more is missing in a flower, you say the flower is an incomplete flower. So when you are asked to draw a complete flower, you know what you are drawing. And when it is incomplete, you know that you have to remove a part of the flower. Then you say a flower is hermaphrodite, is an hermaphrodite flower when both stamens and carpels are present on the same flower. Both stamens and carpels are present on the same flower, you say that